Well, hello. It's been a while since I've done sort of a devlog sort of thing. I'm not sure if this is going to go up on YouTube or it's going to be a private video. It's more than likely going to be a private video. At least for now. I might post it to YouTube at some point, but for right now, it's probably just going to be my inner circle of friends. So if you're listening to this, consider yourself a good friend. Um, so I've been working for the past couple of weeks on this small social. Let's call it rebooting small social because I kind of started down this idea path. Let's call it probably about a year ago or more or less. I don't know. Well, a while back, and then I kind of dropped it, and now I'm kind of picking it back up as I'm getting more into application development. I think that's at least my present focus. Kind of getting off the game development vibe into the application development, seeing how that feels. So the idea with this project, yeah, let's just go ahead and start with what the overall goals for the project are. Social media is sort of a mess as we find it in the end of 2021. I think that it's reorganized society to a large degree. There are effectively maybe half a dozen large social media websites presently. The big ones are Facebook and Instagram, I would say, followed by others, including Web3 sort of stuff or kind of alternate tech kind of websites that are kind of trying to pop up and so forth. And so what I'm trying to do here, let's just go ahead and now that I've kind of set up the landscape here. I don't like any of them. I really want to be in control of my public presence, let's call it. There's a lot of distributed social media sort of things out there. Probably Mastodon would be the kind of the premier one, I would say at the moment, as far as kind of open source kind of social media where it's kind of distributed. The problem with Mastodon, though, and pretty much everything kind of like that, is they all rely on a server at the end of the day. They just can't get away from it for reasonable technical reasons. I would say it's not that they're lack of trying or whatnot, but it's just not quite there yet for them. And the web has progressed a bit since this call it the first wave of distributed social media came along, and I think it might be kind of on the cusp of the edge of where it might need to be to do an actual real social distributed social media platform. So that's what I'm shooting for at this point. We'll see how far I get. I I might make it. I mean, make it as far as like it actually becomes a workable project, or I might not. If I fail, that's okay. There hopefully the pieces that fall out of this little experiment can themselves flourish into something kind of interesting. But for right now, I'm going for like a distributed social media application where you can share your posts and chat with your friends and so forth in a truly distributed way. And so let's just kind of get into what I have currently. I've been, what's taken me a long time actually was I'd done a almost a couple of years now of fairly hardcore browser development with TypeScript and focusing on the browser. So I thought I was, I'm pretty up to snuff on the browser and the web development stuff. And I am in a lot of aspects, especially when it comes to game development, real time graphics, and so forth. But getting back into application development, there's a lot of things I was not as prepared with, I would say. And so I had to, for instance, kind of really bite the bullet and get into React. React is, I think, just the way to do a user interface in, at this particular moment in time. And so I kind of dabbled with React in the past, but I never really jumped in. And so now I'm kind of really jumping into React. So there was a little bit of a learning curve to that. So that kind of slowed me down some, because I started without going down the React path. And then I sort of realized that no, I really, as user interface got more complicated, I kind of realized no, I really do need to do something like React. And so I went down like a little path, and then kind of backed up there a little bit. So that kind of slowed me down. But these things happen. And now I know a heck of a lot more about React. One of the things I had to do was actually go to React 18, which sort of it just boggles my mind that React hasn't done a release since March of 2021. That is just, for a project of that foundational, I would say, not to have pulled off an actual production release since that period of time. But obviously they forked and gone to this React 18 path. That's just that's kind of gives me the creeps. I'm not real happy with that. But anyway, we are where we are. So I'm on I think it's release candidate branch of React 18 currently. Let me show you the code here. I'm showing you the user interface, and that's what you've been looking at this time. So do I want to go down I'll just show off the application as it stands today. So this is the user interface to the application. Let's see if I resize it in the screen. It'll resize. It resizes a little bit. It looks a little better, I think. Yeah, it's a little too much. Yeah, whatever. So it's not, entirely reactive, but whatever. So this is sort of the user interface I'm going for at the moment. It's kind of very simple. It's it's got the menu system at the top there, and then you can do stuff down below. I want to have a search. Search currently does not work, but I definitely think search is important, so it's there. Home screen is just this. You'll note that I'm doing the React router with the hashes. One of the things that really annoys me about that, because I had to upgrade a bunch of stuff and everything, is you can't just all of them have to have a little slash in front of them, and that just, I don't know why, but that just aesthetically that annoys me that I can't do that, right? That is just, I don't know why, but that gets me. Anyway, so we have chat. I'll get into chat because that's probably the most developed part of it there currently is. That's where I worked on quite a bit. Then we have posts. So this is my beginnings of posting articles and so forth. Topics. So the general idea is that there will be a disorganized set of topics. So essentially, users create topics however they want, bit like Reddit, let's call it, and then they post to those topics, and then people can subscribe to those topics and so forth. And but I'll get into how the back end works in a bit. So the idea right now is you'll notice that I have a name and a passkey for the topic. So there is going to be some encryption of the actual content of the topic. So if you don't know the passkey, you can't get into the topic. But if you do, then you're golden. The passkey isn't required. You can have actual just public sort of topics, but if you want a little bit more of a private place to post and browse thoughts, I think it's important to have that as well. Explore is, I don't know, that's just a button for right now. We'll see what that means later. Contacts, so I think that one will want to have friends and to be able to reach out and either chat with your friends or follow people and that sort of thing. So there will be a section for contacts and so forth. You'll note that I'm using the what are they called? Identicons, I think is what the name of it is, for the actual avatar of the user. I'm not sure if I'm going to allow or allow is kind of a bad word. Let's say support um, other images and so forth, because the idea here is that this is more or less all anonymous, right? To some degree, you just are who you say you are, effectively, right? And so I want to combat a little bit the idea that of forgery and so forth, right? That I say I'm Bob, but I'm really Alice, right? And that sort of thing. So there's that. Let's see. And then, why isn't that working? That should have been working. Probably because I went to the bad route. So it's Bug City here. Um, we can connect. We can go online and offline. And I'll get into how I'm doing on and offline here in a minute, because hey, how does that work on and offline to what if there's no server? Well, I'm gonna have to cheat a little bit too, and I'm definitely gonna have to have at least some sort of central location for like stun notifications and stuff like that, for signaling for peer-to-peer sort of communications. So there's always going to have to be something out there in the world that can kind of echo. It's think of it a bit like a big mirror in the sky, right? And everyone, the mirror is just reflecting what everyone else is kind of pushing out to it, but it doesn't really serve any information or even communicate that much. It'll essentially just be kind of big lists of IPs and stuff like that. Is what it's going to be serving, but no actual content and data. So you can kind of connect and unconnect from the that kind of service. And then you can obviously log in and log out. So let's go ahead and start with log in and log out here. So let me log out here. So I have no avatar. So you create a name, create a password, A and B. All right. And that's it, right? You now have a public key and a private key. So figuring out all the cryptography around that was a couple of days. You can obviously your avatar is based on your username and password. So if I type A and B, so if I can type A, B, note that I get the same avatar. But if I do, let's log out here. A, C, let's call it. I get a different avatar, right? With a different signing key and a different encryption key. So that's effectively how it works. So that means that your identity is only your username and password. Or let's just call it name, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a user, right? It can just be whatever, but your name and password. And so that's how I'm doing kind of the profile of the person or the entity that's kind of communicating around here. So that does mean that your password does need to be kind of secure. So I would definitely recommend not choosing a bad, easily guessable password, but I'm going to just leave that up to the user. I think that, 2021 need to have some responsibility for creating using a password manager that is capable of effectively generating random passwords. And then, obviously on top of that, I'm using, what is it called? PBK2, something like that. Essentially something that adds a bunch of entropy to your password. So even if it is relatively weak, it, as long as it's not, very simple, it should be relatively safe. So we can log in, we can log out. One of the things that I just fixed this up today is you can actually store stuff on your hard drive in your browser, which, hey, did you know you could do that? Yes, you can. So this is just a temporary directory here that I have set up. But anyway, I can select it. You can say, hey, the browser is kind of warning you here that, hey, this particular site's going to be able to view your files. And yeah, that's okay. So the idea here is that I want the user to be in control of their data. That's the important, that's kind of one of the if I can pronounce that word, foundational principles that I'm working under is that the user is responsible for their data. So it's not that you have to ask politely for Google or Facebook to give you access to your data and so forth. No, 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 no. You have complete control over it. You're the person responsible for it. So the responsibility takes there's some costs there, but I think again 2021, I think people should be savvy enough to be responsible with their data. If they're not, well, you can just keep using Facebook if you want. Let's see here. So that means when you go to do a post, so I'll just actually, we've already created some topics, some very complicated ones here. A BBBB. So I'll add a post. Again, it's going to kind of warn me that, hey, you're allowing this website to do stuff, and then you have a post. Right now, I don't actually have a way for you to view the post, but I'll show the file in the code editor here in a second. I guess that's probably where we're at. So that's oh, actually, let me show off one other thing before we get into the actual code. So this is the chat application, and so let me see if it's not going to work. It sort of semi works if I have two browsers open simultaneously, but that's going to be difficult to do with OBS. So just take my word that that kind of works. So you can connect and disconnect. Note that you get live changes up here with React. Ooh, sweet. So this is effectively just right now kind of more debug than anything else. We can list profiles. We can set your profile. We can disconnect, connect. Now it's all broken. All right. Well, I guess it's the demonstration thing. So if I list profile, see, I should be getting some. Oh, there we go. That should look a little differently because this is actually just the message that's coming back from the server, which I'm doing on the back end. I'm doing a web worker. So the idea currently is to do a serverless thing for the back end and just have Cloudflare do its magic, and so that way I don't have to worry about DDoSing and all the weird people trying to hack me on the web and all that sort of stuff. So I think I'll just let Cloudflare handle all those headaches. So you should see some disconnect and connect messages here, but you're not. Oh well, whatever. You can do an echo. Obviously that's just sort of the first thing you do to make sure that your client server communications are working. You can also do a broadcast here. That doesn't mean much right now because you can't see the other chat window. But yeah, just know that it's there. And oh, you know what? Oh, I haven't been looking at OBS. I've been looking at my screen. All right, OBS is, I don't know what's going on here, but for some reason my web browser is out of sync with OBS, but OBS has the more I've never seen this before. I don't know what's going on here. OBS is actually more up to date than the actual browser that I'm looking at. It's just doing a screen capture, but obviously it has premier access to the frame buffer somehow or another. I don't know how that works, but anyway, I'm not gonna worry about it. So anyway, that's that. That's how that works. So not a lot of functionality right now, but it's all sort of coming together. Let's see what's next. Let's go with the code. Let me get over to a code window here. Turn that on. Should see some code now. Yes, you do. And we're just gonna I'm just gonna kind of go into the code and play around, just kind of show off a little bit of where we're currently at. That is not the right window. I do not have the right window set. Or not messing with the right window, I should say. Does that look good? Does that look good? Good enough. All right. Let me wet my whistle here a bit. Grab some more tea. Green tea, for those interested. Green tea with a touch of heavy cream. Good stuff. All right. So this is the client. So not really going to get into project organization, all that sort of stuff, but that's kind of a thing. Is you're working with serverless, so you have a thing that's not quite a server, but sort of a server, and you got to kind of work within those constraints. It's kind of interesting. So as you can see, this is a kind of a typical React app if you're familiar with React, and if you're not, it's not that complicated actually. Let me just kind of go over what React is. So the React is effectively just a rendering engine for React components. So you still have your typical TypeScript stuff, and I'm just going to assume that everybody in the world speaks TypeScript at this point. Nobody should ever be doing just flat JavaScript at this point in time. JavaScript's a good language, but TypeScript is just better. So this is my entire application in a sense. So I just have a main that I call, right? Main. So the convention with the TypeScript is that components are capitalized as far as the name. Otherwise, I tend to use lowercase names for functions, but that's the React convention. It seems to kind of be okay. So we have main here. I'm using the React DOM render, right? And so this is the thing that essentially just you have to create your own little element. So I have a little library I've created for utility or whatever you want to call it for handling HTML stuff. So I'm using that here, but effectively all it does is create an element attached to the DOM document body rather, and then you call React create DOM. So this is the old school React 17 way of rendering, and this is the new school React 18 way of rendering. Why they felt the need to do this is sort of frustrating, but it is what they did. So that's how it works. The reason they say is effectively just to keep backwards compatibility, because you can do a DOM. This actually works. Create root actually works as well. You do create root, you get React 18 apparently. If you do render, you get React 17. But you also get React 17 with a nice big fat warning all over the place that I haven't figured out how to disable. So you're really gonna do this, and it's not that big a deal. So anyway, just another annoyance. Let's see. So this is the hash router. So you can see that I'm doing the React DOM sort of stuff. So I'm doing I'd actually started down another kind of fork in the road that I had to then kind of backtrack and go down the other side of the fork. I had started going down the material UI route, and I think Material UI is a decent icon library, and I'm using the Material UI icons. I'm using them via the Google font mechanism, where essentially you just load a particular font file from Google, and that seems to kind of work nice. So I'm liking that. So I'm liking the Material fonts. But the actual components are just, for one, they were just super heavy. They were actually slowing down VS Code. They were so heavy. The other thing is they were just not that useful. Every time I actually wanted to do anything with the component, I was just getting into the styles anyway. And if I, in the actual components themselves, didn't do anything that I really wanted, right? I wanted forms, for instance, right? Well, you don't use Material UI for that. You use something called Formic for that, right? And then I looked at that and it's like, well, that is just, I already kind of half baked my own form uh, component, and then decided to get out of Formic, and then it's like, well, no, I actually like my half-baked one better, and I like Formic. And so I've just I'm not using Formic, and I'm not using Material UI. Now I might come back to those and appreciate their elegance and beauty at some point in the future, but for right now they're just too heavy and don't really provide anything that I can see. um, and that just seems to be kind of a theme. Actually, let me get on my little soapbox here. A little bit of a theme with UI development, let's call it. for browsers, and if you're in the React ecosystem and all that sort of stuff. But just any sort of if you're developing UI sort of stuff, is that the UI people just seem to want quick fixes for something. Just kind of get it done. I don't want to think. I don't want to understand all this stuff, right? And that's such a frustrating mindset, because it gives you a tool that you can use for that one thing, but it doesn't teach you how to actually create stuff. And it's just everywhere. And the tools are just littered with it. And it's just, and then, when eventually you do have to customize the tool, because you always have to customize the tools, then all you're doing is you're just speaking that tool's little language, and you're kind of locked into the tool's ecosystem. And uh, it's just a nightmare. And so that's my little soapbox statement for the state of user interface development in the end of 2021. It's not super impressed or happy. I mean, some things impress me and some things don't. Like React, the actual concept of having the syntax is just killer. It's just awesome. It's beautiful. This is SGML plus some sort of Turing complete programming language is just that's just the bee's knees. And this is a very elegant way of combining the two. And so I really like React, the concept, let's call it. React the library, it's okay, it's not perfect. But the actual concept of doing these components like this is just that's genius. So anyway, let's get off my soapbox here. So we have main, and then of course you have an app, because you always have an app. And so this is the main menu for that you're seeing. So this is effectively that bit black screen that you're viewing most of the time. This is really all it is, and it's just the top menu plus something called an outlet plus some styling crap that I have in here. So an outlet is essentially just the React router library. So those are React routers, essentially the way that you navigate when you need to click on a button and another screen pops up and that sort of stuff. So that's how that works. And it's effective from what I'm seeing. It's really the only route to go if you're doing React. So if you're doing React, go down the React router path. I've been happy with it so far. I'm happy-ish so far. Again, it's like it's the upgrade problem, keeping all your components and libraries in sync that sort of really depend on each other in a deep way. That's the problem with React and React router, is that keeping those kind of balanced and so forth. But once you figure out the little secret sauce there, it kind of works okay. So then we have the outlet. So main here is actually the thing that has all the routes, right? So you have my edit profile, my login profile, all that sort of stuff. So this is simplistic, for a lot of people, I'm sure, React code. You can see that I'm in the midst of still just hacking around in programming. You can tell that because this file is 141 lines long, which is way too long to be any sort of code, in my opinion. But I think I have a pretty good opinion there. So what do I want to show off here? I'm not really quite sure. You can just see there's a lot of code here for doing profile stuff and everything. And, I've had to mess with, I now know how to do the file system API, which is that magic of how you can actually talk to the disk in a browser. Oh my God, IndexedDB. I was kind of forced to go into IndexedDB. I was really hoping to avoid that. But I finally just had to bite the bullet, and now I have my own little IndexedDB library. Let me just show that off for a second. That's actually worth showing off because it's such simple code to wrap around the horror of the DB API. It's just horrific. It's just, and it doesn't have to be. It's really not that complicated to make it a reasonable kind of thing, right? It's just that it's just that is just frustrating. Let's see, VS Code. Let's get you here to IDB. There we go. Now you're seeing my IDB module. So this has kind of been my path for doing TypeScript and kind of development. Is I just create lots of little modules that sort of wrap around stuff. So this is my little module for IndexedDB. So if you ever have to do IndexedDB sort of stuff, I think this is the way to do it. Now there's other libraries that do it. So if you're into creating a lot, just using libraries, well, there's no end of them. Good luck. But if you just want to get to the guts of it, and like how it actually works, here's how it actually works. So this is my just very simple little export thing that I export to have these three little functions, which is really all you need: add, put, and get. Boy, that's how hard could that be? Then you have, let me get into the actual code here. So let's go into add. Whoop. Hot link. So there's add. Boy, that's pretty simple. Boy, look at that. That's real simple. How could this be so complicated? Well, here's how it's so complicated. So for one thing, IndexedDB doesn't use promises. Why doesn't it use promises? Almost certainly because it's kind of an old technology. But I'm pretty sure that promises were kind of a thing when IndexedDB was being developed. But anyway, for whatever reason, it's not using promises, and they haven't updated the interface to use promises, which they really should. But anyway, but I guess, there's obviously wrapper libraries that'll give you that. And that's effectively what I had to create to some degree. But there's also just the insanity of how it actually works. It really is just insane. I don't understand how anyone thought this was any kind of a good idea. Like how did it even, like the person who conceived this, how did it even get out of their head? Much less, I'm sure they had to at least mention it to someone else, right? If that other person didn't just become flabbergasted and say no, I don't know. Anyway, it's just horrible. So what you do is you have to get a DB name. You get a request, right? So this is an immediate thing. So this isn't a promise. Oh, okay. So that means that you have to use these event listeners all over the place. Well, okay, whatever. You get a request, and now you have your database. Well, then you have your what they call object stores inside the database, and those would be the things that you would maybe think of as the database. To be perfectly frank. But anyway, let's whatever, names are names. Everybody has their own little way of wanting to name stuff. So we have our database, and then we have our object store name. Now you have to open the database, and then you have to get your object store. And you think, well, okay, well, you just get your object store, and then you're away. But no. If it doesn't exist already, you have to create it. Well, not a big deal. You just create it, right? No. You have to upgrade the damn database to create your object store, right? So you have to you had to jump through so many hoops just to add an object store onto the database, a thing that should be half a line of code is just this horrible thing where let me go back to open here. Where's open IDE? Yeah, even I'm confused now at this point. Index, add, open. Yeah, okay, so open. Yeah, here we go. Open then has to go to upgrade. So inside your open, right? So you want to get a connection to the database, right? So maybe this could be more properly called connect. I might rename that to connect or something like that. You want to get a connection to a database. Like you had any database driver in the world, right? You have to get a connection to the database, right? but you can't just get a connection in the database because your actual object store might not be there, right? That you're actually looking for, right? And so it's like, well, if my object store isn't actually there, well, how do I, let's say that the object store is more like a table in the database. Okay, so the object store is the table in the database, and then the database is the database. Let's call it, right. And it's like every time you want to uh, create a new table, you actually have to version your database, right? It's like you have to create a whole new schema. You have to drop your old connection. Notice that I had to do a close here, and this took a while to figure out. This line 22 here, boy, that took me a couple hours to, or maybe not a couple hours, but anyway, it took tens of minutes at least to figure out why the hell I was getting this weird error. And then I finally figured out that it was blocking, and then I finally, kind of figured out that I have to close this request because you can't have multiple requests going on simultaneously, which is just, okay, but whatever. So anyway, you have to do this weird rigmarole thing here where you close it and then I have to upgrade it, right? Which then does another open, right? So, right, notice what we do an open here, and we're kind of in the middle of our open, but we our database is in the right state, so then we have to do another open so that we can with a different version number, so that we can then get the upgrade needed event, so that we can then create the object store. And you know what the big thing of creating the object store is? It's a freaking name. That's all it is. And it's just that's it. It's that one line, and then you resolve it and you're good, right? And that is just such a convoluted. Why would anybody think this was a proper way of doing this? I don't know. I think that, so they just hated web SQL to such an extent. I don't know why. Web SQL was perfectly fine way of doing whatever, but this is not better. Anyway, I'm just sort of griping to gripe at this point, but hopefully you find it amusing. So let's get back to what? How long has this little rant been here? 37 minutes. All right, maybe that's long enough. What else would I want to show? Let's maybe dive a little bit deeper. Let's see if there's anything else. You know what? Let's look at the actual backend code here a little bit. So this is how you do a. Let me bring it up for me as well. This is how you do a. Let's get the thing sized the way you want to get it sized. So this is how you do a Cloudflare quote unquote serverless worker. Isolate might be the better word for that. Isolate. Islet. Islet. I don't know how to pronounce that. Anyway, so this is kind of how you do that. It's really not that complicated for if you're just curious how web workers work. This is basically just this one little line of code here, and you have a web worker. Essentially, you're just listening to a fetch event, and then you're responding with your response, like a typical HTTP response status code with blah, blah, blah. This one's a little bit more complicated because I'm actually using WebSockets. WebSockets are sort of an experimental feature with Cloudflare currently. It's a little bit of magic voodoo that I don't quite understand how they're doing it. And I don't really understand if I'm going to be able to kind of use it the way I want to use it. So this is a little bit of an experiment. But it means you don't have to constantly ping the server and stuff like that. So WebSockets are nice if I can actually use them. The thing that I don't understand is like it's serverless. So if I connect to I have one guy in Japan and one guy in Brazil, how are they going to actually how does that actually work at the end of the day in Cloudflare's network to with WebSockets? I don't know. So we'll see. I have suspicion that there's some devils in the details there. and they don't really expose what their details are right now. Um, so that's basically it. So I have, let me just kind of go off how I'm doing this. So essentially, this is it's a WebSocket, right? So you open a WebSocket, and then you have to pass messages around. So like any good person, I've basically created my own little packet structure, right? So here's a packet that uh, goes between the client and the server and so forth. I'm the way that I'm doing it right now is pretty, a very simple kind of packet where it's just a JavaScript object, um, and it can have these sorts of identifiers, I guess you might want to call them, on the packet. So this is not a generic packet, right? This is a very semantic packet, let's call it. So it's not like a UDP packet or something like that. It can just hold any sort of text or whatever. So this is, although it is that a little bit, right? Because broadcast just has a string, whatever you want to do, right? And I'm doing a string. So, obviously all this is kind of, you mess it around and subject to change and all that sort of stuff. So I have these, so some of these things are strings, some of them are actually more complicated objects. We'll see what I kind of settle down on. But for right now, this is just my own little thing. And then I have my own little routing framework, of course, for, let me just show you how that works, because that's kind of neat. That's kind of a neat little doohickey. So essentially you get the fetch call, you go through the message. So this is the WebSocket, WebSocket pair. You get a client and server sort of side of the pipe. You listen for messages, and then you accept on the server, send a response. So this response is essentially your one-time HTTP response. So this isn't your kind of your WebSocket response. This is just you kind of upgrading the HTTP call to a WebSocket call, so it can hang around for a long time. So then you get you're in the message passing land. So this is handling the WebSocket message events. So you can see that I'm doing stuff here. Lots of console messages because I'm kind of, like I said, just kind of, this is still in heavy development mode. So I just parse, safe parse. This is kind of annoying. There's another annoyance. Why is JavaScript parser have to throw exceptions when it has bad data? Why can't it just, I don't know. There's got to be some other way of doing that. Anyway, so this just always returns undefined if it's you can't parse it. Route packets. Essentially, this is my router, right? So you'll note that I have so off the pure packet. So this essentially just looks at this routing table, right? It says, oh, hey, is it an echo? Is it subscribe? Blah blah blah, right? Because it just kind of mirrors this, right? And it says, oh yeah, I know how to handle that. I send it to the echo route, right? And so echo route just knows that it's a packet route, which just essentially is a function that takes the context, the packet, and any known peers, right? And then it does whatever the heck it wants to do, right? But it returns the message that's going to go back to the actual, the client. And so here you're just saying where you're going to go to, right? So the context.id is, this is really getting down in the weeds, and you're not going to understand it, but essentially this is the actual peer you want to talk to. Let's say that you're chatting between two, you have two web browser sessions open and you're chatting. Well, that's just a ID, so that I know who to send the packet to. Or if I want to broadcast it, I can just broadcast it to everyone, right? So let's look at broadcast routes, right? So if I broadcast route, well, I just look at all the known peers, and that's who I send it to, right? And I just send the broadcast, the actual content of the broadcast to everybody. So it's dead simple. Hopefully I can just kind of keep it dead simple here, but we'll find out. And then a peer context is essentially just, I actually had to, I'm using a publish subscribe model. So that you can the idea being like any sort of kind of communications networky kind of thing like this, you're almost always going to go to a publish subscribe model, I would think. And so that's what I have here. So each peer is just going to have a set of subscriptions that it's listening for, and it can you can actually subscribe and unsubscribe and all that sort of stuff, right? And that's just on the actual context of the actual I call them peers, you know. And so that's that's how all that kind of works at a very high level, fast, rushed sort of idea. Yeah, you can see that the code's not too complex, and it kind of gets the job done here. So it's kind of fun to create my own little thing here. So that's how that works. Let's see. Is there anything else I really want to? And that's really you can see this is really about as complex as I want to make the Cloudflare worker, the serverless worker thing. I am going to have to make it a little bit more complex because I am going to have to do because I do want to get into actual web P2P stuff, also so-called what's it called, WebRTC, real-time communications. I think it's what that stands for. And that when I get into that, then I'll have to jump the hurdle of things like stun servers and stuff like that to kind of get around firewalls. Firewalls are kind of a big pain in the rear, and so that's where you need the signaling, and you need that centralized kind of reflective thing that everyone's kind of pointing to figure out what their IP address is, and then also to kind of negotiate. Hey, I'm looking for a peer. Where are you gonna? You have to have somewhere that kind of has this nice big list of everyone who's currently communicating, and so that's the idea. Is that's where I want the serverless, quote unquote. That's its responsibility, I believe, and so and then hope we'll see how this works because at the end of the day, it also needs to be kind of usable. And so one of the problems with a kind of a pure distributed system is that you always have to be online 100% of the time if you want to communicate, right? If I want to look at your posts and so forth, and what, and most people aren't used to having a browser window open up 100% of the time just for people to be able to read your communications, right? And that's kind of a new concept and it's really kind of an annoying concept as well. So my ideas around that, I might get into that in the let's call it the next episode of my devlog. Hopefully I'm to that point. But my idea, I'll just kind of give you a broad oversweep of my idea for that right now, is to have is to actually use a blockchain to store all of the messages. And I have some ideas around how I'm going to, how do I say that? The kind of the economics around it, because I don't want a standard blockchain, right, where it's actually you can send and receive like money and stuff like that, right? So this isn't that kind of blockchain. I'm still going to be using a proof of work and that sort of thing, and it will be a chain of blocks. But the idea here isn't that these this that the coins themselves would be transferable in and of themselves, right? You can only spend the coins to publish a message effectively. And what I believe that will do is that kind of changes the economic model a bit, such that it's no longer, how would I say this? It's no longer interesting to mine the cryptocurrency just to like accumulate wealth or what have you, right? So that kind of changes the economic model of the blockchain a bit. And my goal with that, honestly, is because I want to make it so that just normal user sort of person can maybe mine the block for about 30 seconds, 60 seconds, about as long as it takes for them to kind of maybe type out a message, right? Right. In the time that it takes them to type out a message, I want them to have spent the work, right, and their CPU to, have enough, enough coins, let's call it, to actually publish the message that they want to publish, right? And um, and so the coins themselves have to be kind of insanely cheap, right? And stay insanely cheap, but still worth a little something, right? To kind of, to get the benefits of spam reduction and so on and so forth. And also, the idea is also to make it worthwhile for people to actually keep their browsers up, right? So that there is a slight incentive for me to keep my browser up a little bit longer, and also to store not only my own messages but potentially other people's messages, right, on that they have to post, right, on the blockchain. So I'm rewarded, right, for actually sharing other people's content inside my browser, right. And so that's kind of the idea of how you get around not having my browser open all the time, but my content that I'm publishing, my posts, still being available out there in the world for other people to see, right? Well, as long as somebody, like I post it to a blockchain, and then somebody, has that blockchain and is, I don't know, what would you call it? Seeding it, maybe, to kind of mix metaphors a bit. They're seeding the chain, so they're essentially, they'll provide the blockchain content to whoever wants it in a peer-to-peer fashion. And the economic model of that is that the chain becomes more valuable the more people have access to it. So therefore, you're kind of incentivized to make the actual blockchain itself valuable. If that makes sense. Like I'm putting a post to, let's say, the cute cats topic, right? So I have a cute cat post I put on there. Well, that blockchain has some data in it, right? And so other people have to be incentivized to actually share that data with everyone else, right? And so that's kind of how the economic model works. I'm very you can't see it, but I'm waving my hands like nobody's business right now. So there's a lot of hand waving going on here, and I don't know if that's really going to work out or not, but we'll see. That's my primitive thoughts for how to kind of incentivize people to share content, because that's the big problem, is that how to actually post something and have it alive, and other people still have some sort of incentive to share your post around once you're offline. I think that's kind of important for a peer-to-peer communications kind of network, social media thing. And that's really it. I think my voice is kind of cracking here. I'm getting a little bit low on the tea. Might be getting on to dinner time now. So anyway, I'm going to call that a post in a day, and so that's where I'm at currently. Hopefully, in the next week or two, I might actually have a live thing that people can play with out there on the interwebs. We'll see. This might all come to nothing. I don't know. But anyway, right now I'm just having fun coding around and uh, having battling cryptography on one hand and the browser on the other, and then peer-to-peer communications on my third hand. Right? It's just sort of like this. There's a lot of, I bit off quite a bit here. Probably more than I could chew, but we'll see. Hopefully, I can at least get it good enough that I can maybe I'll entice other people to kind of maybe want to work on this as well. But we're not quite there yet. But we'll see. Anyway, if you listen this long, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time and attention. And maybe the next one will be a little bit more organized. Shoot me up with any questions you have, or anything you want to any ideas you might have or whatnot. This is definitely, like I said, our very early days in this project, and I'm looking for all the influence, that I can take up, right? Like shoot me with your ideas or your thoughts on this, and I'll see what I can do with them. Anyway, catch you guys later. Bye. Well, if I can turn off OBS. OBS. Stop working. Stop recording. All right, there you go. Bye bye.